All right, cool. So that was your number three. Let's take a look at your number two.
Okay. Number two is Kid A by Radiohead. This is probably like so far maybe the most famous band or artist I've shown so far, although the next one is kind of more famous, I guess. But whatever. So Kid A, or rather Radiohead, because there's so many ways I could start talking about Radiohead. They are, I think, one of the greatest bands I've ever had the chance to hear. And the another thing that comes back again, I think from many of my favorite artists, the ability to innovate with each album.
Mm,
And I think this album specifically just shows that in their career more than everybody, rather every other album, because they in this album they which came out in the year 2000, it it is a completely left turn from what they were doing
mm,
before.
mm,
They earlier on they were like a alternative rock band,
mm,
just they had some sort of electronic influence in their previous album, OK Computer. But with this album, they lean very heavily into those electronic beats, kind of like Björk did on the previous album that I showed. And what comes out of this is, I think, the most just sort of numb
mm,
feel. How to describe it? Because when I hear this, I mean, life has its up and downs, and this album feels like that middle place, like that.
mm,
It's not quite up, it's not quite down. There's this sort of numbness that's at the middle, and this is what this album feels.
mm,
And I'd say that already the first few seconds of this album show that it has a very famous first track, which is called "Everything in Its Right Place."
mm,
It's a kind of ironic title. Uh, Everything is not in its right place. And but when you hear those first few sounds, you really already get a feeling of how the entire album is going to sound,
mm,
because it puts you immediately into that middle spot of like neither happiness nor sadness, just numbness.
mm,
And so when you have songs like also Idiotech, which is maybe the most famous of this, which is like a very atmospheric, like sort of uh, ballad, I guess, with
mm,
very harsh electronic beats that where the singer is singing about some of the most enigmatic things I've ever heard.
mm,
Really, another aspect of the of this album that I really like is how enigmatic it feels,
mm,
because every time I go into it, I really don't understand a lot about what he's saying other than a few songs. So each time I go into it, I get something entirely different based
mm,
on like how I'm feeling. And on a song like Idiotech, he seems sometimes to be talking about like the apocalypse
mm,
and like how, which I guess kind of feels like the album cover as well.
mm,
It's because like there's volcanoes here,
right.
the atmosphere doesn't look really all that breathable, I guess.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And so this entire album just feels like a journey that like kind of never ends, although the album does end.
mm,
It's because it's like it sits in that middle of like where you can kind really see a way to go up or down.
mm.
So again, I'm getting really abstract to describe some of this album. I'm sorry for that, but it's how I feel. I'm sorry.
No, no, no worries, no worries. All right, so that was your number two. And on for
Yes.
the grand finale. Who do we have for number one?